Alright, so let's look at what happened today. So yesterday, once we sort of had this AMD model here and displaced to the downside, I was looking for, this to all be like a low resistance liquidity run, which is what ended up happening. I kind of wanted to see us like come up in here a little bit, but the CPI data at 8:30 had a huge candle to the downside. So once we started bouncing here around market open, I was expecting, if you look here, we had all these stacked lows. We had this 15-minute fair value gap. And if you zoom out a bit, we had the wick, the consequent encroachment of this 4-hour wick. And this is also OTE of this entire range. So I was expecting us to come down here, and unfortunately I wasn't really able to capitalize on the opportunities. I missed out on some opportunities, kind of got a little emotional, took a loss, and then decided to cut it. But anyway, we started retracing throughout the morning, came all the way up into OTE of the range here from the CPI data. So right here is when I wanted to look for shorts. But this is very big price movement here, right? This is 200 points. So I was trying to be very, very careful with how I was going to position myself. And we ended up having some different SMTs here. And I'll go over the different trades that I was looking at taking. So the first one, it's actually kind of funny. So we have this 1 minute, you're kind of in this breaker here, this 1 minute breaker, right? So you come up, take liquidity, reject, and originally this SMT was here, so I wasn't going to take anything, but zooming in, I was just kind of watching price action, and I definitely wasn't going to take this trade, but I wanted to journal it just because I think I just thought it was interesting. So we had this 5-minute fair value gap that we hadn't retraced into yet, and then if you look in smaller time frames, right, you have all these lows here, and I actually zoomed all the way in to the 5-second, and I saw this model form. Again, I wasn't going to take this trade just because I felt like trading on the 5-second chart was like just way too cracked out. But we came into OTE of this range, and I just thought it was interesting to note that we respected this 5-second fair value gap, and then you take the high displacement market structure shift to then sell off and take all of these lows. So I just journaled that. I thought it was interesting. Price is fractal. You see these things on all these time frames, but I definitely wasn't going to take that trade. I just thought it was an interesting thing to bring up. But after we rebalanced to this 5-minute, we're basically just consolidating in here. I really wanted to see us bounce, take out this high market structure shift, and then look for something. But then we ended up forming an SMT with ES. ES and NQ were like very different. ES was much more bearish, but as you can see, ES here is just uptrending this whole time, and NQ never took that high. So if you zoom in, we had all of this low resistance liquidity here, 5-minute fair value gap with this low in here. So once you displace to the downside, we have a fair value gap here. We never really tapped into this one, but you could have had a short play somewhere in here, and I didn't take that either because I wasn't confident in this structure. And then zooming out a bit more, once we ripped through this 5-minute fair value gap here, and we had those SMTs which held, I was pretty confident that was, we weren't going to come take these highs. This was the start of the sell side of the curve, and I was looking for us to realistically come up into this 5-minute fair value gap, which was in OTE of the range of this price leg. But we ended up holding this as inverse, and we ended up having a pretty decent model here. So you come up, we're taking these highs, right? Take this final high, take this little internal high, reject off the 15-second fair value gap, and then we had this 15-second fair value gap as a second entry. Zooming out a little bit, we had this 1-minute fair value gap, which was overlapped with the 15-second. And so when we started coming up here, I had a limit order. I wanted to see this high right here just get wicked above. I wanted to see a little stop hunt here, coming from that 1-minute fair value gap. I just wanted to see, that high get stop rated before displacing down, so I had a limit here. Never ended up coming up to that, so we left that high intact, and ended up selling off. So once we started to displace, and I felt like I missed plenty of opportunities in here, and if you zoom out to the 5-minute, at this point in time, I was feeling a little upset, I won't lie. I felt like, all the good opportunities to enter pretty much happened, and now we're just going to speed up to the downside, and I basically missed the move. So we had this 5-minute fair value gap, and I'm still looking for possibilities to enter. And zooming in, we had pull back to this 5-minute. We had this, accumulation of liquidity. All of these lows were still intact. And then once we came into the 5 and, broke above these highs and then had displacement down, I was looking for that to be the low resistance liquidity to kind of run us through that and then spark the rest of the sell model, taking out all of these lows. And I was just going to take off at one of these lows down here, because I didn't know, if we would run through all of these or if we would start to have a pullback at some point. So I was just going to target this most recent low. Zooming in though, the mistake I made was this wasn't in discount of the range, right? So if you look here, we came up to discount of the range, still held the 5-minute. We displaced lower, and I was watching this price action, and as we came up and we took these highs, right, displacement lower, I was looking at this these two fair value gaps here, but at this point I was like, this just doesn't look clean. I want us to come up to take this high first before going lower. And I mean, this was an extremely choppy move, but it ended up working out. And after all of this, I was pretty much just like, all right, I need to step away. Like, this is what I was talking about the other day as well. So once I had my bias, which was correct, right? And once I start to see all this happen and I'm like missing out on the moves, I'm still new to my trading journey, so those emotions affect me. At this point, I knew if I continued to trade here, just trying to catch this move to the downside, I was definitely going to make a stupid mistake. But once we didn't take this level and we bounced back, we had this 5 minute here. I was just looking to see an internal model, and we had this high, then we come up, we take this high, then we even take that little high on a 15-second chart. So we took this high, and then we even took this high before displacing lower. So if you zoom out to a 1 minute, this is your little 1 minute breaker here. And this was also just in discount of the range. So I was willing to take a short here, but if you see, there was no real, pullback into a fair value gap or anything. We just kind of rolled over and dumped into this low. So didn't take anything there, and once we sold off and took all of these lows, this was also later in the day, around 3:20, 3:30, so at this point I was pretty much done. So a little unfortunate, but took that one loss and didn't let it spiral me out of control or anything. So not all bad, right? I thought this was gonna happen, and it did. So I'm gaining conviction in what I think the draw and liquidity is. And now if you see, after taking these lows, we're just completely ripping to the upside. So who knows, maybe tomorrow, this is your little unicorn setup, right? So maybe tomorrow, this will provide some opportunity, right? Maybe we start to retrace into here before we have some sort of internal model at the lows, but we'll have to see. So overall, it's a little unfortunate, but I think, I'm glad that I stayed disciplined and I didn't, let the FOMO spiral me out of control, because I won't lie, I had so much FOMO here. I wanted to trade so badly this whole time, but I had to see the internal model, and we just kept sort of rolling over without taking any buy side and showing me a model, so I stayed away. And I'm glad I did that from a discipline perspective. I mean, I think it's a good habit to not jump into trades, right? And really wait for a good setup. This wasn't really a great setup. This was kind of an emotional trade, but took the loss and then stepped away. So it is what it is. We live to fight another day. So as long as I stay disciplined and keep the losers small, we'll be able to stay in this game for the long run. So I'm not here to get rich quick. I'm here to learn a skill that I'll have for the rest of my life. So just gonna jot down the notes and move on to the next day. So if you traded, hopefully you caught this 200-point move to the downside and made some money. And if I trade tomorrow, I'll make another video. So until then, peace out.